Not every love story starts with fireworks. Some start with walkie-talkies, quantum equations, and a spark in the static. It's the summer of 1985. Hawkins is quiet for once, and Dustin Henderson has been shipped off to Camp Nowhere, a paradise for kids who speak in schematics and memorize Star Wars trivia like gospel. His expectations? Build some cool gadgets, maybe prank a counselor, and definitely not fall in love. He's awkward, smart, loud. Not exactly leading man material in a place like this. But then came Suzie. She wasn't what he expected. No lab coat, no braces, just a quick wit, soft curls, and a mind sharp enough to outcode him in under 10 minutes. She corrected his math during their first partnered lab session. He corrected her radio coil alignment the next day. By the third evening, they were finishing each other's circuits like it was second nature. At first, it was all science. They spent hours wiring up a long-range ham radio system, way more powerful than anything allowed at camp. The goal? To talk to Utah from Indiana, just for the flex. They stole scraps from the supply shed, boosted the output with a battery array they built from salvaged flashlights. Every night they'd meet near the tree line, tinker and trade theories like other kids traded comic books. But something else was happening too. In between decoding frequency bands and arguing over musical taste, Dustin swore by Weird Al, Suzie countered with Kate Bush, they started leaning in a little closer, smiling a little longer. Their jokes got softer, their voices got lower. Dustin's heart would stutter every time she adjusted his headset. And Suzie? She'd pretend not to notice when he blushed, but her smile always gave her away. One night, they finished tightening the final circuit in their receiver. The signal range, Dustin claimed, could reach Canada, maybe even space. Suzie rolled her eyes, but stayed with him long after curfew, adjusting dials and logging frequencies. It was past midnight when it happened. A sudden burst of noise hit the radio, louder than anything they'd picked up before. Static snapped, warped, then shifted into a strange, pulsing sound. A voice crackled through, distorted, clipped, repeating what sounded like a sequence of numbers. Suzie froze. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Dustin nodded, twisting the dial. The transmission repeated. The voice wasn't human. Or if it was, something had seriously garbled it. And then came something else. A tone. Short, low, rhythmic. Not part of any broadcast they'd ever heard. Dustin flipped through their signal log and found it. An old government encryption tag. One tied to Hawkins Lab. "What is Hawkins Lab doing on a dead military frequency?" Suzie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dustin didn't have an answer. The trees rustled behind them. For the first time all summer, the woods felt wrong. Heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Suzie reached for the dial, but Dustin grabbed her hand. "Wait!" The tone was still pulsing, steady, like it was calling something, and someone, or something, was already listening. Camp Nowhere didn't feel like Camp Nowhere anymore. The change wasn't obvious at first. A few flickering light bulbs. A power outage during breakfast. Someone's walkie picking up what sounded like whispering, but only for a second. Dustin tried to laugh it off. So did Suzie. But something about the way the static crackled that night, how it felt like it was crawling under their skin, lingered long after they packed up their radio and snuck back to their cabins. By morning, the animals had started disappearing. First the rabbits, then the crows. Even the raccoons that liked to raid the trash bins went silent. One of the counsellors joked about a local bear, but no one could explain the claw marks that appeared across the back of the archery shed. Too wide, too deep, no footprints. Dustin and Suzie met at the far end of camp that afternoon, their usual excitement dulled by a growing unease. They replayed the transmission over and over, but the numbers made no sense. The tone had changed too. It wasn't just repeating anymore, it was pulsing, almost like it was syncing to something. Suzie had a theory, a terrifying one. "What if it's not just a signal?" she whispered. "What if it's a tracker?" Dustin blinked, his mouth half open. She continued, her voice low and tight, like saying it out loud might make it more real. What if it was meant to find something, or worse, wake something up? Neither of them said the word upside down, but it was there, in the space between their silence. They'd both read about what happened in Hawkins. The explosion. The gate. The cover story that didn't cover much. Dustin hadn't told her everything, not yet, but he could see it in her eyes. She knew. She was smart enough to connect the dots. That night, something moved through the woods. Campers whispered about a shadowy thing with no eyes, standing still just beyond the clearing. A kid named Ben swore he saw it glitch between trees, like it didn't belong entirely to this world. Another said they heard it breathing from inside their tent, but when they opened the flap, nothing was there. Just frozen grass and a dead bird lying belly up in the dirt. Suzie didn't sleep. Dustin barely blinked. The next morning the camp's main generator failed, but not because it was old. It had been drained completely, like something had sucked the electricity out of it. Every battery in the tech shed was dead. Flashlights flickered even with fresh cells. The landline buzzed with low, guttural static. Dustin and Suzie checked the camp's radio rig in secret, hands trembling. The pulse was stronger now, louder, clearer, and underneath it something new had emerged. A second frequency, thinner, twitchier, like a response, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to anything human. Suzie leaned back from the headset, pale and speechless. Dustin stared at the coil of wires they'd built together, the one they were so proud of. Now it looked more like a noose than a project. They hadn't created a radio. They'd built a beacon. The creature showed up the next night, not completely, just a glimpse. Tall, bony, eyes that shimmered but didn't blink. It didn't attack. Not yet. It stood in the clearing by the mess hall, feeding on the buzz from the busted floodlight, its body shuddering as sparks danced over its shoulders. Dustin and Suzie watched from the shadows, frozen in place. He reached for her hand, and she gripped his like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. The worst part wasn't the creature's presence. It was the realization that it was just listening, waiting, like it was following instructions, and they were the ones who gave the order. By the time the camp director started talking about evacuation, it was already too late. The creature had grown bolder. At night, it stalked the cabins, draining light sources as it passed, leaving behind cold air and warped wood. In the mornings, they found evidence of it everywhere. Dead batteries, scrambled camp radios, even a melted walkie-talkie Dustin had hidden in his bunk. The thing was learning, getting stronger, and every night the strange signal they'd intercepted pulsed louder through the radio they built. Dustin stopped trying to rationalize it. Whatever Suzie had guessed was right. The frequency wasn't a glitch or a coincidence. It was a call. And they had answered, but they weren't done yet. They didn't want to tell the counsellors. What could they even say? That they built a long-range radio and accidentally summoned an electricity-eating shadow monster? That they were using the ghost of Hawkins Lab tech to talk to something not from this world? No one would believe them. So they did what kids like them always did when the world didn't listen. They fixed it themselves. Suzie stayed up all night drawing schematics. Dustin scavenged copper wire and broken speaker parts from the tech lab. Together, they built a radio cage, a makeshift frequency trap that emitted a pulse loud enough to disrupt the creature's tracking senses. They didn't know if it would stop it forever, but maybe it could slow it down. Maybe it could save someone else from what was coming next. They set it in the centre of the woods where the thing had last been seen feeding on the camp's electrical grid. Suzie adjusted the emitter, fingers shaking. Dustin armed the battery circuit and linked it to their Walkman as a trigger. They didn't say much while they worked. They didn't need to. But when everything was in place, Suzie finally looked up. Her voice was small, afraid. "Do you think this is our fault?" Dustin hesitated, not because he didn't know the answer, but because it didn't matter. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. "I think we woke it up," he said softly. "But we're the only ones who can stop it now." That night, they waited together behind the ridge. The woods were still, almost too still. The Walkman buzzed faintly beside them, looped to the radio cage by a thin red wire. Then it came. It didn't walk, It glided, its limbs jerked like a bad marionette, and its skin looked unfinished, almost translucent. It hissed softly, tasting the air, drawn to the pulse like a moth to flame. When it stepped into the circle of the trap, Suzie nodded. Dustin hit play. The emitter screamed to life. The creature howled, convulsing in place. Electricity sparked through its body. It collapsed, twitching, writhing, but not dead, just stunned. Then the unthinkable happened. The radio buzzed, not from their system, but from somewhere else. A second signal, faint, fractured, but real. Suzie grabbed the headset. The numbers were different now. Faster. Dozens of them. Too many for one transmission. She looked at Dustin. "It's not alone," she whispered. The creature roared, then vanished into thin air, blinked out like it had never been there at all. The trap had worked, but only long enough for it to report back. They ran. The next morning, the camp was evacuated. The story made the papers as a freak weather event that fried the power grid. No one mentioned the missing animals. No one asked about the melted antenna tower in the forest. Dustin left early. He didn't hug Suzie goodbye at the bus. He kissed her. Quick, awkward, a little crooked, but real. She smiled with tears in her eyes and gave him the headset from their first prototype. "Just in case," she said, "if they come back." As his bus pulled away, Dustin stared out the window at the tree line. Something was still out there, and now it knew his name. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.